What happens when one of the world's most influential entrepreneurs walks into a business, and just because of a red hat with 4 simple words, he's kicked out? This unexpected encounter will reveal the true power of leadership, understanding, and how one small moment can change everything. It was a quiet afternoon in a bustling city, where a popular local coffee shop had become a favorite spot for entrepreneurs and creatives alike. The warm glow of the lights from inside the shop contrasted with the chilly weather outside. People sipped their drinks, some engaged in quiet conversation, others working on laptops. The air buzzed with casual chatter, ideas being exchanged, and the simple rhythms of everyday life. Among the crowd was Elon Musk, the man known for his revolutionary ideas and business ventures. But today, he wasn't the powerful CEO of Tesla, SpaceX, or Neuralink. No, today he was just a regular man, hoping to enjoy a cup of coffee in peace. Elon had been in the city for a series of meetings, and after hours of brainstorming and strategizing, he was ready for a break. He slipped on a casual jacket, grabbed his hat, a red MAGA cap, one that had been given to him during a political event a while back, and made his way into the shop. He had worn it before without incident, as it had simply been part of his outfit, but this time he didn't realize the stir it would cause. As he walked into the coffee shop, the small bell above the door jingled, signaling his arrival. He stood still for a moment, allowing his eyes to adjust to the light inside. The room was filled with the hum of conversation, but as soon as Elon entered, the mood seemed to shift. People stopped talking. A few people glanced at him, their eyes widening. They didn't recognize him at first, but it was the red hat that immediately caught their attention. He stood there for a second, waiting for someone to acknowledge him. But instead, the silence deepened. It wasn't long before the owner of the coffee shop, a tall and stern man in his mid-40s, approached him. "Excuse me," the man said, his voice steady but firm. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Elon blinked, momentarily confused. "Excuse me?" he asked, unsure if he had heard correctly. The owner nodded, his expression serious. "I don't allow people with that kind of thing in here," he said, motioning toward Elon's MAGA hat. "We don't tolerate that kind of political symbolism in my business." Elon was taken aback. "You're asking me to leave because of my hat?" "Yes," the man said. "It's a statement I'm not willing to support, and I don't want that energy in my shop. You can leave." For a moment, Elon considered just walking out and brushing it off. He'd dealt with similar situations before, but something about this moment struck him differently. The owner wasn't just asking him to leave because of a disagreement. He was turning away a customer based on an assumption. There was something deeper at play here, something that made Elon want to understand why this had become such a big issue. With a calm demeanor, Elon took a deep breath and slowly stood up. He looked at the owner with a sense of quiet resolve. "I understand you're upset, but I think you may be misunderstanding something here." The owner crossed his arms and waited for Elon to continue. "I'm not here to make a political statement," Elon said. "I'm here for a cup of coffee just like everyone else. The hat isn't the problem. It's how we judge others based on appearances. What happened to treating people with kindness and respect, regardless of our differences?" The shop owner was silent for a moment, clearly caught off guard. He hadn't expected Elon to respond so calmly, especially after being confronted. There was something about Elon's tone that made the owner question his own actions. But instead of backing down, the shop owner stood his ground. "It's not about kindness," he said, his voice hardening. "It's about values. What you're wearing, what it represents. I just can't support it." Elon smiled softly, recognizing the conviction in the man's words. He wasn't trying to pick a fight. He was trying to make a point. But Elon also knew that sometimes the best way to truly change someone's perspective wasn't to argue, but to lead by example. Without another word, Elon walked toward the door. "You're right," he said, "but I hope one day you'll realize that we don't have to agree on everything to respect each other. We all have more in common than we think." And with that, he left. The bell above the door jingled again as he stepped outside, his footsteps echoing in the quiet street. As Elon walked down the sidewalk, he couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. This wasn't about politics. It was about a breakdown of communication, of empathy. He had been dismissed by a business owner who had made assumptions about him based solely on what he wore, without giving him a chance to explain himself. And that, in itself, was the problem. But the story didn't end there. Back inside the shop, the owner stood behind the counter, his arms still crossed, but his mind was elsewhere. He couldn't stop thinking about what Elon had said. The man he had just kicked out wasn't just some random customer. He was someone who had built companies that changed the world. And yet, he had been judged based on a hat. The shop owner thought about the values he stood for, the ideals he wanted to convey to his customers, the principles that guided his business. Was it really worth turning someone away over a symbol, over a disagreement in politics? Was he truly living up to the values of kindness and acceptance that he had always preached? As the minutes passed, he began to feel a sense of regret. Elon had been right. It wasn't about politics. It was about understanding, about treating people with dignity, no matter where they came from or what they believed. And in that moment the owner realized that he had made a mistake. Without hesitation, he grabbed his jacket and made his way to the door, stepping outside to catch up with Elon. The cold air hit him, but it didn't stop him. He had to make things right. When he finally found Elon walking down the street, he called out to him. "Wait!" the owner shouted. Elon turned around, a slight smile on his face. "Yes?" I was wrong," the owner said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I should have never asked you to leave. I let my own assumptions get in the way of treating you with respect. I apologize." Elon raised an eyebrow, surprised by the man's honesty. "Thank you," he said. "It's not about being right. It's about learning from each other and understanding where we're coming from." The owner nodded, grateful for Elon's willingness to forgive. "I want to make it right. If you're willing, I'd love to offer you a cup of coffee. On the house." Elon smiled, appreciating the gesture. "I'd like that." And so they walked back into the coffee shop together, the bell jingling again, this time with a sense of new beginnings. They sat down, shared a drink, and talked, not about politics, but about the future, about leadership, and about how we can all do better to understand one another. In that moment, the business owner learned an invaluable lesson. It's not about agreeing on everything, but about treating others with dignity, no matter our differences. And Elon Musk, the visionary entrepreneur, had unknowingly opened the door to that realization. The shop owner's business continued to thrive, but he carried with him the lesson of that day, that respect, kindness, and understanding were the true values that mattered. As the business owner sat down with Elon Musk, a sense of realization washed over him. He had just learned something profound, something that would change the way he viewed not only his business, but the world around him. It wasn't about politics or what people wore, but about the inherent dignity we all deserved, no matter our background, beliefs, or opinions. For the first time in a while, the owner found himself thinking deeply. What had happened earlier in the day, when he had asked Elon to leave simply because of a hat, wasn't just a mistake. It was a reflection of the times we were living in, where people made snap judgments based on surface-level appearances and ideologies without ever truly understanding the other person. As Elon took a sip of his coffee, the owner couldn't help but marvel at the humility Elon displayed in the face of such an unnecessary confrontation. He hadn't come back to fight, to argue, or to make the situation about winning or losing. Instead, Elon had quietly imparted a lesson on empathy, understanding, and leadership. "Elon, I have to be honest with you," the owner began, his voice sincere. "I never expected this. I thought I was standing up for something I believed in. But what you said earlier made me realize something I hadn't considered." Elon set his coffee down and smiled. "What did you realize?" "I realized that sometimes we let our beliefs, our biases even, get in the way of human connection. That hat, your opinions, they're just symbols, right? But what's more important is how we treat each other. What you said about treating people with respect and dignity, regardless of differences, really struck me," the owner said, his voice filled with genuine regret. "I've been so focused on defending my views that I failed to see the bigger picture. I was wrong, and I wanted to apologize." Elon nodded, his expression understanding. "We all make mistakes. What matters is learning from them and using those lessons to grow. I appreciate you taking the time to reflect on this. Not everyone would have done that." The owner felt a weight lifted off his shoulders. It was clear that Elon wasn't just offering forgiveness, but a path to growth. The kindness in Elon's words was a stark contrast to the cold dismissal he had received earlier that day. He had been treated with respect, not for the opinions he held, but for the person he was. "I think I owe you more than an apology," the owner continued. "I want to give you something in return. If there's anything I can do to support your ventures or ideas, I'd love to be a part of it. I know I can't undo what happened earlier, but maybe we can start over." Elon leaned back in his chair, considering the owner's words. The man's offer wasn't just about making amends, it was about building something new. It was about turning a negative moment into a positive one, a lesson for both parties to carry forward. "I appreciate the offer truly," Elon said, "but you've already done enough. Sometimes it's the small moments of change, like this conversation, that have the biggest impact." The shop owner smiled, feeling a sense of pride that he hadn't expected when he first met Elon. He had always known that running a business meant dealing with customers, but now he realized it was so much more. It was about creating a space for connection, for understanding, and for treating people the way they deserve to be treated, regardless of their background, their opinions, or their appearance. Elon Musk, the billionaire entrepreneur, had just delivered a lesson not in business or technology, but in human decency. The owner now saw the world in a new light. He was no longer just a businessman defending his views. He was a person learning to lead with empathy, to see beyond labels, and to open himself up to the possibility that change could come from the most unexpected places. As the two of them continued to chat, the owner couldn't help but reflect on how many people in his life he had judged too quickly, whether it was a customer, a colleague, or even someone from a different background. The world was full of misunderstandings, miscommunications and assumptions, but it was also full of the potential for change. All it took was one conversation, one moment, to shift someone's perspective. Before long, their coffee cups were empty, but the conversation still lingered in the air. Elon had a way of making you think, of challenging your preconceived notions without ever being confrontational. It wasn't about forcing someone to agree with him. It was about making them understand that we all shared something much bigger than our differences. In the end, we were all people, trying to make our way through life with respect, kindness, and the hope of creating a better world for future generations. As they stood to leave, the business owner felt a new sense of responsibility, both for his business and for the community he served. He had learned that his actions could either divide or unite people, depending on how he chose to respond. And it wasn't just about his customers. It was about how he treated every person who walked through his doors, no matter their political beliefs, their backgrounds, or the labels society had placed on them. "I'll make sure this place is a space where everyone feels welcome," the owner said, shaking Elon's hand once more. "I've learned my lesson." Elon smiled, a hint of pride in his eyes. "I'm glad to hear that. Just remember, respect goes a long way. We might not always agree, but we can always be kind." As Elon walked out of the coffee shop, the owner stood for a moment, watching him go. He had just witnessed a powerful exchange, a reminder that change didn't always come in the form of grand gestures or bold decisions. Sometimes change came from the smallest of moments: a conversation, a lesson, and a willingness to grow. And as the bell above the door jingled again, signaling the arrival of new customers, the owner knew that his coffee shop would never be the same. The lesson he had learned that day would echo in everything he did from that point forward. His business would thrive, but more importantly, it would be a place where people could connect, learn, and treat one another with the respect and dignity they all deserved. In the end, the business owner's encounter with Elon Musk over a MAGA hat had sparked a chain of events that went far beyond politics. It had sparked a transformation, a shift in the way people saw each other and in the way they chose to treat one another. And it all started with one simple act: the willingness to listen, to understand, and to change. The shop owner now knew that leadership wasn't about asserting dominance or defending a point of view. It was about leading with empathy, listening with an open heart, and recognizing the humanity in every person who crossed your path. And in the process, he had gained something far more valuable than just a lesson. He had gained a new sense of purpose and a new understanding of what it truly meant to lead. As the days passed, the story of that encounter spread throughout the community. People talked about the coffee shop owner's apology, Elon Musk's humility, and the powerful lesson in treating each other with respect. It became a conversation starter, a story that reminded people that we all have the capacity to change, to learn, and to be better versions of ourselves. As the days passed, the story of the encounter between the business owner and Elon Musk continued to spread like wildfire throughout the community. Word of the unexpected turn of events reached beyond the walls of the coffee shop, carried by the conversations of customers, social media posts, and even local news outlets. People were captivated by the powerful lesson that had unfolded right before their eyes, one that transcended politics, beliefs, and labels. The coffee shop owner had become something of a local hero, not for standing firm in his beliefs, but for his ability to reflect, learn, and change. He had shown humility in admitting his mistake, and through his apology, he had opened the door to a deeper understanding of what it meant to lead with empathy and kindness. In a world where disagreements often led to division, the owner had chosen to listen and evolve, demonstrating that growth was possible even in moments of conflict. Elon Musk's role in the story was equally significant. He hadn't sought to win the confrontation or prove a point, but instead had used the moment as an opportunity to show the importance of treating people with respect. His quiet wisdom had offered a gentle reminder that despite our differences, we are all human beings deserving of dignity. His actions, rooted in humility and grace, had left a lasting impact on the business owner and, by extension, the entire community. The coffee shop, once just a local gathering spot, had become a symbol of change and unity. Customers now walked in with a renewed sense of appreciation for the diverse backgrounds and perspectives that made up their community. There was a newfound respect in the air, a recognition that every person had something valuable to offer, regardless of their politics, appearance, or beliefs. The shop owner had created a space where people felt welcome, where conversations flowed freely without fear of judgment. It wasn't long before the local media picked up on the story. The news outlets reported on the unexpected meeting between the billionaire entrepreneur and the local coffee shop owner, highlighting the heartwarming twist that had followed. Interviews were conducted with customers who had witnessed the encounter, and many shared their admiration for the owner's willingness to reflect and change. The story resonated with people from all walks of life. Those who had been quick to judge, those who had struggled with their own biases, and those who had simply never thought about the power of empathy in everyday interactions. The business owner, once a proud defender of his opinions, now found himself at the center of an important lesson in leadership. He had learned that true leadership wasn't about asserting one's own views, but about guiding others with compassion and understanding. Leadership, he realized, was about listening, about creating space for growth, and about empowering others to do the same. His small coffee shop had become a place where people could engage with each other in meaningful ways, where differences were celebrated rather than feared. As the story spread, it caught the attention of business leaders, community organizers, and even politicians, all of whom took note of the powerful impact that simple acts of kindness and respect could have. The lesson from that one fateful day was now being shared across industries, inspiring leaders to rethink how they approach conflicts, how they led their teams, and how they interacted with the world. It was a reminder that empathy, more than power or influence, was the true marker of a great leader. But for the coffee shop owner, the changes were more personal. He had grown in ways he hadn't expected. He had always prided himself on running a successful business, but now he understood that the success of his business wasn't just about profits or efficiency. It was about creating a space where people felt heard, where differences were respected, and where empathy was at the heart of every interaction. One day, as the business owner was preparing for another busy afternoon, he found himself reflecting on the lesson he had learned. He thought about his past interactions with customers, those who had walked through his door with differing opinions, backgrounds, and experiences. How many times had he jumped to conclusions, judged others based on appearances or preconceived notions? How many opportunities had he missed to truly listen, to understand, and to connect? He smiled to himself, realizing that he was no longer the same person he had been before that encounter with Elon Musk. He had learned that true strength wasn't in holding on to one's beliefs at all costs, but in being open to change, to growth, and to understanding. He had come to appreciate the importance of dialogue, of stepping into someone else's shoes, and of leading with compassion. The coffee shop continued to thrive, but now it was more than just a business. It was a community space where conversations flourished, where people learned from each other, and where respect was the foundation of every interaction. The business owner had set out to run a successful shop, but he had found something even more valuable, a deep sense of purpose in creating a space where empathy and understanding were valued above all else. As months passed, the story of that one conversation remained a source of inspiration for many. It was a story that reminded people of the power of empathy, the importance of humility, and the value of treating others with respect. It was a reminder that leadership wasn't about asserting control, but about empowering others to be their best selves. And for the coffee shop owner, life had taken on a new meaning. He had not only built a successful business, but he had also built a legacy of compassion, understanding, and change. He had learned that sometimes the most unexpected encounters could lead to the most profound transformations, and that the lessons we learn from each other can be the ones that shape the world. In the end, the coffee shop owner's encounter with Elon Musk over a MAGA hat had changed everything, not just for him, but for the entire community. It had sparked a shift in perspective, a reminder that we are all capable of change, of learning, and of growing. And that, in the end, it is our humanity, our ability to understand and respect one another, that makes all the difference.